Now that we're finished with the background of our tissue paper collage, it's time to start working on the flower. Since I chose the cool colors for the background, then I'm going to choose the opposite of that, the warm colors, for the flower. But this time, instead of just mixing them up, we're going to actually try to shade with these, which means you won't use all of the colors. You just need a shadow and a highlight. For my shadow, I'm going to use orange. For my highlight, I'm going to use yellow. I could have chosen to use red for my shadow and pink for my highlight, or red for my shadow and orange for my highlight. You pick the colors that you want out of your new color scheme. So like I said, I'm gonna choose orange and yellow. Well, I really only need orange to begin with. We're gonna dip and wipe. You're only working on the edges of your petals with your shadow color. So I'm gonna do a nice thick section of glue, but I'm only working around the outside of the petal. I'm not really worried about this inside part right there. What I'm gonna do is take my shadow color and start to lay them down. So I'm gonna fish for oranges and not use the other colors that are in there. And your oranges could be different shades. I've got kind of a light orange and a dark orange. Working right along that black Sharpie line, putting a nice thick section of glue in. And then remembering to put another layer of glue over top of that. Now that I've done my shadow color around the outside edge of the petal, it's time to do my highlight color to fill in the rest of the petal. So I'm going to put another layer of glue down, trying to work right up to that Sharpie line and maybe going over it just a little. So now what I've kind of done was created a shadow on the edge of the petal and a highlight in the center of the petal. I'm going to keep repeating those steps until I have shadows on the edges of the petals and highlights towards the center of the flower. I don't want you to tear the tissue paper, but if you do have areas like this right here where it won't just stay inside the Sharpie line, you can very gently pry it over and then put just a little more glue on the top of that, and it'll have a slight wrinkle right there along the black Sharpie line. That's okay, it actually gives it a little bit of texture. So don't tear the tissue paper into sizes that you need. Remember, it can overlap the Sharpie just a little bit, but if it overlaps it too much and you're not happy with it, just kind of crunch it ever so slightly. Don't be too rough with it, it will tear. Put a little glue on top and then it can stay exactly in that spot. I've been searching in my bowl for more yellows and oranges and I'm not finding any. So if that happens to you, you can return your tissue paper back to the container and get another handful. Another little trick, if your tissue paper squares are too big, like it way overlaps the Sharpie line right there, I'm gonna put some glue on this part of it, then just fold it back and put more glue over it. And now I've gotten off of that petal a little bit more, which is what I was trying to do. Your flower may not be like this, but mine is. I have another set of smaller petals that are kind of overlapping these. Well, I want to change colors because if I continue to just use yellow, there's no separation between the yellow and the yellow. So I'm gonna switch colors, and if you have smaller petals like that, like I do, you may switch colors too, but you still have to stay in the same color scheme. Since I've been using warm colors for my flower, I have to continue using warm colors for those smaller petals as well. Some of your flower petals might actually go all the way to the center, which is called the pollen part. So I'm not quite ready to start on the pollen yet because I have these small petals to do. When you're done with your first two colors, you might be ready for the pollen. So it just depends on what kind of flower you drew. So within my warm color scheme, pink is one of the colors in there. I'm going to choose that to do these smaller petals with. Okay, that's what it looks like now that I'm finished with all of the petals. You'll notice I went over all of these lines. Those are called stamens on the flower because the Sharpie shows right through the tissue paper. So if you have anything like that on your drawing, you can glue right over those. But now I've left this section in the middle called the pollen area, and I'm going to change colors for that yet again. This time though, instead of using warm colors, since I was using warm on the flower, I need to switch. I have two choices. I can either use the cool colors like I used for the background, or I have not used my neutrals at all. I could choose to use some neutral colors for the pollen area. I think I'm going to choose neutrals because I'd like to use some of that black. And notice how I'm having to shape it to fit in that spot. I still didn't cut the tissue paper. I just folded it and kept gluing it and pushing it in until it fit the shape that I needed it to be. I have to have a little patience with this part. And then when you glue over it, just kind of tap so that it doesn't move out of its position. And that's what it looks like after you finish the pollen section as well.